Hello everyone, it's been a while since the last upload. I hope you're doing well. So, this month marks a very important anniversary for the Yakuza franchise, more specifically the Kurohyo games. On March 22nd, 2012, the second and, as of today, final Kurohyo game was released in Japan. And now, 10 years later, we got a proper fan translation so that everyone can finally play the game in English. The anniversary in question was definitely one of the reasons why I decided to do this video, but it wasn't the only one. According to recent media announcements, RGG Studio is currently working on numerous unannounced titles, which made me wonder if any of them were possibly related to Kurohyo. Considering how the Kiwami remake of Yakuza 1 also coincided with the anniversary of the title in question, I felt that this would make for a fun discussion. To start off, we should do a recap of the major events related to the Yakuza franchise, to see why a Kurohyo remake would even be considered amongst the other projects the studio has made. First off, let's talk about Yakuza 7. It was the start of a new era for the mainline games, with a new city, protagonist, and an emphasis on turn-based combat. Due to its overwhelming commercial and critical success, the developers were certain that they could continue the mainline entries with this particular approach, as opposed to bringing Kiryu out of his quote-unquote retirement. Despite the new combat style, RGG Studio expressed an interest in creating more beat-em-up style games as well, which was proven by the release of Lost Judgment in 2021. The two styles would coexist and the entire fanbase would be happy. Normally, this would be where the discussion would stop, but things got a bit complicated down the line. The reason why so many people are uncertain if a third Judgment game would even be developed relates to a company called Johnny & Associates. To keep it simple, this is a very old school talent agency to which the actor Kimura Takaya is contractually bound. Kimura himself, being the voice and face of the protagonist for the Judgment series, was immensely important in pushing this new IP forward in the Eastern market, due to his near-legendary status in the mainstream media. However, the problem arises from the fact that the company that manages him doesn't want the Judgment games to receive PC ports. From that perspective, it's because modders could take the likeness of their client and use it to make Rule 34 type of content and ruin his public image. Well, even if we would agree with this fairly outdated perspective of theirs, you'd need to consider the fact that modders have already excavated most of the in-game models and animations from the games in question, with some of them even making not safe for work content from them. This would mean that there's no reason to refrain from the PC ports anymore, but Johnny & Associates still stand their ground. As for RGG Studios, while Nagoshi was still in the company, it was stated that this standstill between one side wanting the PC ports to be made and the other side not budging would result in the Judgment series not receiving any sequels in the future. Keep in mind that both RGG Studios and Kimura Takaya were on board with the series from day one, but due to these legalities, they may need to abandon it, at least for the time being. So, how does all of that connect to Kurohyo, you may ask? Well, RGG have expressed an interest in making more beat-em-up style games as it is fairly profitable for them, which leaves them with two options. They can either remake some of their older titles to set up a new string of sequels, or make a brand new IP. It has been stated that RGG was working on a brand new IP in recent times, but that the IP is completely unrelated to the Yakuza or Judgment games. We also know that Yakuza 8 has been in development for quite some time and is expected to be released either in 2022 or in early 2023. If the news about the studio's current project is correct, that means they have at least one more project besides these two in the making. Considering the amount of time and money that goes into making brand new assets, it's safe to say that they won't be making two brand new IPs back to back. So, let's examine option 1. These are the console spin-offs that RGG Studios has developed in the past. With everything we know so far, we can temporarily remove Judgment from the discussion due to the legal issues. In a similar way, I would also remove Hokuto ga Gotoku, as the IP in question isn't theirs, and it wouldn't really make sense for it to be their new long-running series. Dead Souls would have to be cut as well, since the zombie craze of the industry has been dormant for quite some time, which would make a spin-off to Dead Souls an incredibly hard project to present to Sega as profitable. This leaves us with two spin-off series, each having two titles to their name. The Samurai era games would be an interesting choice, considering the success of Sekiro and RGG Studios' desire to localize the titles in question. The only issue is the fact that Kenzan and Ishin technically aren't sequels to one another. Apart from the historical themes, both of these games have their own sets of characters and belong to different time periods. You could argue that RGG Studios could continue making self-sufficient entries like that, given Japan's rich history. After all, people will get the games because they recognize the faces of the characters from the mainline series. I could see them making one more game in that vein, perhaps with cameos of the new characters from Yakuza 7 onwards, but any more than that would make for an incredibly hard franchise to keep up with. Imagine 5 different Samurai era games with completely unrelated stories but the exact same faces on the covers. Newcomers would be terrified of the prospect, much like they were before Yakuza 0 came out as the quote-unquote perfect modern starting point for this lengthy series. Finally, this leaves us with the PSP games. As you could tell from our previous video, the spin-off series showed much promise, to the point that it was the first to spawn its own manga series and have 2 J-dramas dedicated to it. Beyond that, it was also the first spin-off in this franchise to get a direct sequel, with the titles in question being released only 2 years apart. This feat would only be succeeded by the Judgment spin-offs due to the IP's amazing reception. One of the best things about Kurohyo in particular is the main protagonist, Ukiyo Tatsuya. At the end of the second game he appeared in, he was only 19 years old, and the ending didn't really show what he would be doing with his life after the ending of the story, beyond simply forging his own path. This leaves plenty of room for the writers of the series to be creative with the pre-established setting, which predominantly focused on the underground combat exhibitions. They could even do a time skip to show how Tatsuya would deal with the changes in the Yakuza world, whether it be the arson of Kamurocho in Yakuza 6 or the dissolution of the Tojo clan in Yakuza 7. The unique atmosphere of these games has yet to be recaptured and would feel like a nice contrast to the more hopeful, shonen-esque motives from the turn-based era of Yakuza. There is so much more that I would like to add to this discussion, but I will save it for a different video, where I will go over what a Kurohyo remake would even look like in this day and age. Until then, I hope you take care of yourselves. Thank you for listening to my rambling once again, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!